Okay, let's play some damn chess. Slut. From China. Street whore. With UZI Emily. No, slut. I don't want research. I want a slutty game of slutty chess, you slutty slut. From China? Fucking goddamn street whore. Uzman.
Get up here, you're fired.
With UZI Emily.
Oh, hey, Skippy, what are you doing here?
Well, I'm with the band.
What instrument do you play?
I don't play an instrument. I have a more important role than that. I'm the band's advisor.
Skippy, if you don't get that thing up here, you're fired.
There you are.
Now, when I first saw this appendicitis, it shook me. I felt so inferior to her. I wish I could be exceptional at something like she wasn't really singing. I was hoping it was not her really singing. Because I was shook and thought of her being superior, having become superior to me. Now I'm glad it was her. I like her. I want her to succeed now. But I want to succeed too.
Oh, hey, Skippy, what are you doing here?
Well, I'm with the band.
What instrument do you play?
I don't play an instrument. I have a more important role than that. I'm the band's advisor.
Skippy, if you don't get that thing up here, you're fired.
There you are.
Spit.
Oh, hey, Skippy, what are you doing here?
Well, I'm with
You
the band.
suck my dick,
What
bitch.
instrument do you play?
I don't play an instrument. I have a more
suck
important
my
role than that.
dick, bitch.
I'm the band's advisor.
Skippy, if you don't get
Start
that
the
thing up
damn
here,
game!
you're fired.
Start the damn game! Slut.
There you are.
I'm bringing out that whore. Don't even think about it! Slut. China! Now fuck up and overlook this. Damn. I know you wanna hose it. Hose it, that's cute. Suck my slut! You suck my goddamn motherfucking slut. Goddamn son of a goddamn bitch. Now this is one butt ugly man, Christopher Hitchens. No wonder he's an atheist.
Let's apply the reasonable standard. If we see a fine-tuned universe, What's more likely? Someone fine-tuned it, or it fine-tuned itself? Could the universe have created itself out of nothing? Is there some alternative explanation for the data at hand? No.
The time when I debate is people saying nothing can come from nothing, you can't get something from nothing, so since
Don't
there is
even
something,
think about
someone
it!
must have wanted there to be something. Not, I think, a very impressive syllogism. I can't do it all this evening, but it's very easy for anyone to go and see Professor Lawrence Krauss deliver his brilliant lecture online called The Whole Universe from Nothing, which explains to you how
I
indeed
heard
you can
that
get
it was
very
shit.
large numbers of things from nothing with the proper understanding.
That was pure
So, admitting that
shit.
I don't know
I was
exactly
not
how it
impressed
began.
with the day.
It's not at all the same as Dinesh's admission that he doesn't know either, because he
I
feels he
was
has
not
to know.
impressed with that. Damn!
Because if it's not a matter of faith and it's not a matter of God, he can't say he believes in it a little bit. It must
Now
be a
fucking
real
bing
belief to be
bing bong
genuine,
then.
and it must
Son
have
of
some
a
explanatory value. And he doesn't hold it very strongly, and it doesn't explain anything for which we have better explanations.
The standards that I'm appealing to
Suck my
are,
dick, bitch. You
in a
suck my
way,
dick,
very
you
intuitive.
whore.
We have currently a major scientific
Suck
project to
my
look for life
dick,
on other
whore.
planets. Now, truth of it is, if we were to get information that on, let's say, the moon Europa, we found hieroglyphics, interesting architectural structures, some apparent roving
Stupid!
vehicles. This would settle the argument.
That's one of those
Right
pieces
away,
of
we would
advice. You're a
conclude,
whore,
as long as we
you're
didn't put them
damn
there,
right.
that there must be some other forms of life that have done that. If someone came along and said molecules
You
of sand
slut
assemble
that
themselves
slut.
into
Shut
orbits,
up!
this would be an explanation, but a stupid one, compared to the inference to intelligent design. So, in fact, the scientists say that even if we get radio signals in Morse code, they would be adequate to demonstrate the existence of intelligent life elsewhere. So, my point is, let's apply
Suck
the
my
reasonable
dick,
standard. If we see a fine-tuned
God,
universe,
fuck
what's more likely? Someone fine-tuned it, or it fine-tuned itself? Could the universe have created itself out of nothing? Is there some alternative explanation for the data at hand? No.
I'll chase that
So
whore
I'm
to
simply
kingdom
saying, let's
come!
go with the best explanation. By the way, my argument isn't eternal. If 20 years from now you had a scientific argument that was better, that said, hey, we figured it all out, I would go with that. I would have to drop this argument. I'm saying that in the current mode of knowledge and thinking, this is a successful explanation. You can't change the subject and say, well, now explain the Holocaust. That requires a different set of rebuttals. I would say the Holocaust
my
is a product
suck my
of free will.
motherfucking dick,
God didn't
bitch.
do the Holocaust, Hitler did. The Nazis did. To try to deflect blame to
You suck my
God for
motherfucking
human
dick,
action
bitch.
voluntarily
You suck
undertaken
my
is to
dick,
minimize
bitch.
the human capacity for evil. But whether or not that argument works, it has
You
nothing to
you
do with the
suck-
design
you
argument. And
suck
finally,
my
morality,
dick, bitch.
very briefly. Again, if evolution could adequately account for morality, let's remember that the atheist premise is that we are evolved creatures in the world, and that's it. So evolution has to do a lot of work. It has to explain the human desire to give blood to strangers. If it can't do that, then it fails as an adequate explanation for a very important form of human behavioral morality that is seen in every culture known to man. It requires explanation. I have an alternative explanation. That in human beings there are two parts. We are evolutionary creatures in the world. That explains why we desire sex and we desire food to survive, to reproduce. But then I have this other thing inside of me, what Adam Smith calls the impartial spectator. And that's another voice. And it's in me, but it's not of me. In fact, it's often stopping me from doing what I want to do. It's blocking my self-interest. Where does that come from? How does evolution account for that? So I'm saying that the God hypothesis casts more light on that subject, the hypothesis of a moral lawgiver. In fact, even the hypothesis of a life to come. You may say a final court in which our
Suck
moral
my
deeds
slut.
will be adjudicated. Explains why we act the way we do now. Otherwise, our
Suck
own
my
behavior is
slut.
incomprehensible to us. That's the strength of the presuppositional argument.
Well, because of religion's own very large claims. And because
Ah,
something I
fuck
didn't
your
have time
whore
to
up.
go into, because not all these religions can be simultaneously true. I mean, there are enormous numbers of competing religions. It's another reason that it's obviously man-made. It's what you would expect that it's man-made. There'd be lots of religions with incompatible
Dumbass!
claims and theologies, and that this would lead to further quarrelling. Either one of them is completely true, as the Roman Church used to say, it was the one true church, some of its members still do, or all of them are false, or all of them are true, which of course can't be true. Now to Dinesh, and the matter of anomalies and the question of ex nihilo. Half the time when I debate, it's people saying, nothing can come from nothing, you can't get something from nothing, so since there is something, someone must have wanted there to be something. Not, I think, a very impressive syllogism. I can't do it all this evening, but it's very easy for anyone to go and see Professor Lawrence Krauss deliver his brilliant lecture online called The Whole Universe from Nothing, which explains to you how indeed you can get very large numbers of things from nothing with the proper understanding of quantum theory. And then tonight Dinesh says, really there was nothing, and the Hebrews were so clever that they knew that. And therefore they must have been right about God as well. This is ridiculous. The ancient Hebrews also thought that God made man and women out of nothing or out of dust and clay, whereas we have an exact knowledge, or increasingly exact knowledge, of precisely the genetic materials in common with other creatures from which we were assembled. And then not content with that, he says biblical prophecy is true in respect of Palestine. This is an extraordinary thing, and you were right to mention the Holocaust. If it's true that God wanted the Jews to get back to Palestine, then it must have been true that he wanted their exile to be ended. The galut, as it's known to Zionism, the exile, the wandering. And we know how that wandering was ended. By Christian Europe throwing living Jewish babies into furnaces. Well, that must be part of the plan then, mustn't it? And some rabbis used to claim that. By the way, they used to claim that the Holocaust was a punishment for exile. And then people started to desert the synagogue. So they shut up about it until the 67 war. And then when the Israeli army got the Wailing Wall back, they said, we shouldn't have spoken so quickly. Actually, this was what God always had in mind all along. The conquest by Jews of the Palestinians, where you see how brilliantly that's worked out. I don't think it's wise, or moral, or decent to try and detect the finger of God in human quarrels. I think the enterprise is futile and incidentally shows the absurdity of all arguments from design. Thank you.
Hitchens makes a strong point when he says the existence of many conflicting religions is exactly what we'd expect if they were man-made.
Stupid!
We know that religions
Kiss your
reflect
ass,
the
you
geography,
slut.
politics, and culture of their time. For example, Hinduism, Norse mythology, and Christianity all developed in isolation, making wildly different claims about gods, morality, and creation. They can't all be true, but they can all be human inventions. On the idea that something can't come from nothing, that's outdated thinking. Quantum physics shows that virtual particles appear and disappear in a vacuum with no cause.
Okay.
Lawrence Krauss explains in A Universe.
You dumbass. Lawrence Krauss even says that nothing that the universe came from is not absolute nothing, philosophical nothing. Dumbass. You fucking goddamn son of a bitch ass dumbass. Fucking cunt.
Hello and welcome back to Skepticus. I am your boy, Adam Amnola, and today I'm going to do something that I thought would be a little fun. I was poking around the interwebs looking at Christian apologetics when I came across this article.
Up and take that damn
and the article is 65 apologetics questions every Christian parent needs to learn to answer. This article starts off by saying in a prior post he has talked about why parents have to care about apologetics, and then he puts in parentheses the reasoned defense of Christianity. Ladies and gentlemen, apologetics has nothing to do with the reasoned defense of Christianity. Apologetics is not just defending Christianity. It's picking a dogmatic position and working backwards from it, finding any evidence that you need in order to back up your position, ignoring any evidence that does not back up your position, and sticking in an unreasoned fashion to whatever your holy book tells you to do. And to be clear, I don't have a problem with the idea that somebody would quote-unquote defend their faith. If there's some Muslim next to you and he says your religion's stupid and you feel like engaging with him and you say no it's not, I mean, fine. It's probably not very productive. But if you feel the need to defend your faith, defend it. But I will tell you this, unfortunately, too many times, apologetics has nothing to do with simply defending your faith. It has everything to do with coming up with any excuse that you can find to justify what has already been hammered into your head by your religious leaders, by your church, and by your holy text. That's why apologetics has nothing to do with being a reasoned defense of Christianity. So the writer of the article says we need to know the specific questions we most need to study and discuss with our kids. The ones that non-believers most frequently challenge Christians on, and the ones that most frequently turn young adults away from their faith after spending 18 years in church. I will tell you, having looked through the list of questions, if any of these can actually turn away someone away from your church, then your faith sucks. It's that simple. If I were going to have a God, it would be a God that could be questioned without having to come up with answers that are manufactured to presuppose a certain position. But nevertheless, let's get into these. Number one, what key arguments are there for and against God's existence? I'm not going to sit here and list them all for you. I mean, I'd have to do a little Google search and make a little prep or whatever. I will tell you that you can list the arguments all day. Most of the arguments, like the teleological argument, for example, that are given, it's not like they are proofs for God. A lot of times they are presented as being proofs for God, and yet they are nothing of the sort. Aquinas had his famous 5 ways, which were all proposed to be proofs for God, and yet, again, they fall far short of being any proof for God. And this is going to come up time and time and again as we go through this list, but this list makes a common oversight that I see from so many Christian apologetics, because they constantly put in God where they are thinking Christian God. So take something like the teleological argument. Even if you believe that's a good argument, and it's not, but let's just say you wanted to say,
what the hell is the teleological
that's why God exists. Checkmate. Okay, fine. That does nothing to prove the Christian God. Even if we accepted the teleological argument, you could absolutely make the same argument in favor of Allah or Krishna or Buddha or any other entity that you wanted to come up with. So many of these arguments that you talk about aren't even arguments for Christianity, but so many times Christians assume that if they could make a good case for God, that it would somehow be a case for the Christian God, and yet they never bother to tell you why the Christian God is the God. Of course, the key arguments against God's existence are very simple. There's not a damn shred of evidence anywhere. And no, the fact that babies are born and the fact that trees are so pretty is not evidence. If you think that's evidence, it's because you don't really have an understanding of what evidence actually is. Number 2, what are the practical implications of an atheistic worldview? There is no such thing as an atheistic worldview. There are certain ideas that you could probably say are more likely to be shared amongst atheists, but the only thing that atheists believe is that there isn't a God. So the idea that there is an atheist worldview is a common and ridiculous trope. It's a straw man which is trotted out by Christians time and time again, because if they can peg you to a worldview, then they can start trying to attack that worldview. But amongst atheists, there are many different worldviews. Atheism itself infers no worldview whatsoever. So the idea that you would even ask, what are the practical implications of an atheistic worldview, exposes the fact that you don't understand the question. Number 3, why would a good God allow evil to exist?
Dumbass.
Well, hey, Johnny, this depends. Do you believe in free will? Because if you believe in free will, then the answer is done. That's why God allows evil to exist. The problem is that the Bible is very explicit in God saying that he purposely made evil, allows evil to exist, and in some cases even commits evil acts. But the easiest answer to this, if Christians did not feel like they had to defend every damn letter of the Bible, is that, hey, there's free will, and therefore that is why evil exists. Although that doesn't cover everything that we might consider to be evil. There is evil by volition, meaning an evil that I do against my neighbor, or that a government does against me, or mankind does to mankind. That part is certainly covered by free will if you were to get off some of your other verses in the Bible that directly contradict free will. Of course, there's broader things that happen in our environment that I would say are naturalistic, but some people would say they're evil. For example, why do we have to have a world in which hurricanes destroy people? I mean, supposedly, according to Christian doctrine, God could stop hurricanes, and yet does not. And if you really want to be sick about it, you might even say that God does these things for his own purposes, like it's building your character, or it's testing you, or that his committing evil acts against us is somehow part of his plan, which gets really, really sticky, but let's not go into that. Number 4, why would a good God allow suffering to exist? Again, this is kind of a repeat of the free will issue from question number 3. I'm going to skip that. Number 5, why would God command the death of so many people in the Bible? For example, the Canaanites. Because God only cares about the Hebrews, i.e. the Israelites. This is made clear time and time again. And even with regard to the Israelites, he's happy to kill them off at will anytime they do anything that pisses them off in the slightest bit. In fact, he will even aid foreign countries to attack them and defeat them if he feels like it's going to teach them a lesson. But the biggest reason that he would allow the deaths of so many people like the Canaanites is because he literally couldn't care less about the Canaanites. All he cares about are the Hebrews. And if you don't believe that, go read the Old Testament. Don't just cherry pick it. Read it, and you'll see he couldn't care less. He couldn't care less about the people that he was plaguing in Egypt, because you know what? They were not Israelites. He couldn't care less about the people that he was ordering them to slaughter, like the Canaanites, because they were not Israelites. Number 6, how can a loving God send people to hell? He can't. There is no justice in hell. If you wanted to tell me that hell was somehow proportional to what evil you had done on this earth, and that it ultimately had a limit, in which case you could either be released into heaven or blinked out of existence, I mean, I still wouldn't think that that's a real thing, but at least it would make some sense as to how a loving God could do that. But literally, in the Christian mindset, if I simply do not believe the right things, I can burn in hell for eternity. There is no logical way that you can tell me a loving God would do that. It makes no sense. Number 7, why does God remain so hidden? Well, you know, there's a really good answer for that. Think about it really carefully. Why would God be so hidden? I don't know, Johnny. You'll have to think deeply on that one. Number 8, why does the Old Testament God seem different than the New Testament God? First of all, no, he doesn't seem different. Really, the bigger issue is that in the New Testament, we don't hear from God anymore. You hear from Jebus. And Jebus is, at least on the surface, happier, lovelier, peacier, more kind of hippie-ish type, although if you read carefully, this isn't always true. But even Jebus said that every law of the Old Testament stands, down to the letter. So the idea that there is an Old Testament God or a New Testament God is a modern convention that's used to brush away all of the atrocities and the nastiness that one finds in the Old Testament. Number 9, why would God need people to worship him? Isn't that egotistical and arrogant? Yes, it is, Johnny. Good job. That's the only logical answer to this. The idea that the all-knowing, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, most powerful being in the universe who supposedly created the whole universe needs these tiny little ant people to worship him is one of the most ridiculous aspects of the Christian worldview. And it also is proof that the Christian God is a small, petty God. And if you don't believe me on that, just look at God himself, who said his name is jealous. That's not me making up. That is your scripture saying that his name is jealous. He's a petty little God. Number 10, what is the difference between absolute and relative truth? Now, I do think it's funny because they're going to have a couple things here about truth. And usually this is presented more as a question about morality. Is there objective morality or relative morality? And they're saying truth. And I don't think they mean it the way that it reads. Because, of course, there is absolute truth. Absolute truth are those things which can be verified. tested.
Holy Ghost.
In other words, it's what science gets to, Johnny. Yeah, science gets us to absolute truth. Now, it may take iterations. It may take peer review. It may take us revising our theories until we can actually hone them into being true laws of nature. But the fact is that how you get to absolute truth is through science. There is no relative truth. Something is either true or it's not, although our understanding of it at the time may feel relative because we don't understand all of the factors that come into play. Number 11, how can it be reasonable for Christians to claim knowledge of an objective truth? It's very reasonable because there are a lot of Christians, despite me hacking away on a channel like this and griping about apologists, there are many Christians who don't have their head way up their Christian backside and actually understand that science is real. And they understand that the earth is not 6,000 years old. They understand that things like gravity and other laws of nature are real and can be tested, and they are objective truth. But if you say relative truth, this is like the same idea of having alternative facts. It doesn't make any sense. Number 12, what is the role and danger of using common sense in evaluating truth claims? Well, the role or the danger of it is that you may be ostracized by your dogmatic sycophants in your church who don't want you using common sense, and they will throw tons of scripture at you that tell you not to use common sense, because the only thing that they want you to use is whatever was told to you by the book or by your religious leaders. Because if you start using common sense, then you will be a danger to them. Number 13, isn't hell an unreasonable punishment for not believing in a specific set of truth claims? Of course it is. But the bigger issue that they're not even bringing up here in this question is, how can you expect someone to believe something that they don't naturally believe? In other words, here's why hell is a completely unreasonable punishment, aside from the fact that it's eternal and completely unbalanced. But aside from that, you can't just make yourself believe something. You either believe the Magic Sky Daddy or you don't. And if you don't believe the Magic Sky Daddy, there's no amount of you throwing these truth claims at me, as it says, they're claims. There is no number of claims that you can throw at me that are actually going to make me believe. It's not even within my ability to make myself believe. I can tell you I believe to try to check off some spiritual checkbox, but at the end of the day, that's not belief. That's just me playing a role to try to satisfy my Christian friends. Number 14, how can Christians think their personal religious experiences with God are any more true than those of adherents to other belief systems? They can't. That's really simple. They can't. If you want to tell me that your personal religious experience with God is totally true, and you want to tell me that Sitna, who lives in New Delhi, his experiences, or in Delhi, his experiences are false because they were with Krishna, you are advertising your gross ethnocentricity. And you're also advertising the fact that you have a completely closed mind, and all you think is true are those things that your mommy and daddy told you to be true. And you are closed-minded and bigoted towards the beliefs and experiences of others. Number 15, do all religions ultimately point to the same God? Why or why not? Even as an atheist, I would be the first one to tell you that all religions do not point to the same God. I mean, I personally think that they are all fake, but even fake things can be distinct. Like Zeus and Athena are two fake characters in a Greek pantheon, but that does not mean that they are the same. They are two different concepts, two different characters. Now, there are aspects of many religions, like the major religions that are Abrahamic traditions, like Judaism, Christianity, and yes, Islam, that all do stem from the same God, whether you guys want to admit it or not. But there are other religions, of course, that definitely have vastly different ideas of God. And even within the Abrahamic traditions, sometimes their ideas of God are so different that they will fight endlessly about, no, we don't worship the same God. Because you know what? Religion loves some fighting. Yeah, that's the first thing you got to do if you're religious, is fight with everyone else. Number 16, what are the key similarities and differences between the world's major religions? For example, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. I could talk about this for a while. I'm not an expert on these things, but I mean, I could definitely come up with a lot of reasons. I think that would be pretty boring as to trying to list all the differences. Number 17, is Christianity a less intelligent worldview than atheism? Why or why not? You may be surprised to hear me say this, but no, Christianity is not a less intelligent worldview. Christianity is a more bigoted and closed-minded worldview than atheism. But I always want to be very careful when I talk about apologists or Christians in general, because there are a lot of Christians, especially the more advanced apologists, if you want to call it that have learned to hone their arguments very well, and some of them are highly intelligent. You can think very stupid things and be a very smart person. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but there are a lot of highly intelligent people in this world who, unfortunately, over time, have learned to adopt and even cling to very ignorant ideas. So, while I don't think that you're ignorant because you're Christian, I will tell you that a lot of the dogma which is fed to people as part of Christianity is blatant ignorance. And people who feel compelled to defend this, as apologists do, will twist themselves in the most painful and exquisite rhetorical knots, finding any way that they can to justify their worldview. But does that mean that they are less intelligent than atheists? No, absolutely not. Again, there are some incredibly intelligent Christians out there. There are some incredibly intelligent atheists out there. There are also very stupid Christians, and yes, very stupid atheists. One does not infer the other. Number 18, what extra biblical evidence is there that Jesus existed as a historical person? There are accounts they famously point to from Josephus and I'm forgetting the second one off the top of my head. They have been referenced. He has been referenced in historical documents. The evidence for his historical existence is weaker than most Christians would have you believe. But that being said, I'm not telling you that he wasn't a historical person or that he didn't walk the earth at some point. I'm just saying that it's not as open and shut as a lot of Christians would have you believe. Nevertheless, there are a handful of references. There aren't many. There are a handful of references to Jesus from outside of Christian doctrine. Now, there are, of course, after his death, many, many, many more references to this burgeoning movement of Christianity, but that's very different than specific references exactly to Jesus. 19. What major Old Testament prophecies did Jesus fulfill? Not many. So the biggest ones that you can make an argument for are from Isaiah and the suffering servant. This is all in the eye of the beholder. Despite what Christians will tell you, they will point to hundreds or even thousands of Old Testament prophecies that he fulfilled. There is not one that is an open and shut prophecy fulfillment. Like I said, the closest and most logical fits, if you will, are from those of the suffering servant from Isaiah. But even that is very much in the eye of the beholder. When you look at the rest of the prophecies that Jesus supposedly fulfilled, most of them aren't even prophecies. They are people trying to draw connections. I mean, I have seen this as weak as Jonah was in the whale for 3 days. Jesus was dead supposedly for 3 days and resurrected, and therefore that's the fulfillment of a prophecy. And yet there is no prophecy in Jonah. The idea that there's a prophecy there at all, and the idea that he was in the whale for 3 days and that somehow is a prophecy fulfilled by Jesus, is truly wish fulfillment on the part of Christians. And almost every other prophecy that Christians point to that Jesus supposedly fulfilled is complete bupkis. Also, there are a handful of prophecies that, sure, he fulfilled because they were easy to fulfill and he knew about them, like riding into Jerusalem on a donkey. He knew about this. It was easy for him to fulfill it. He knew that this would be one more sign that he was the Messiah. So to say that he fulfilled it, I mean, I guess so, but it's no different than if you told me that in the second coming, this person will walk down my street in a red shirt. And guess what? I could walk down my street in a red shirt and say that I fulfilled a prophecy. Who cares? Number 20. Was Jesus wrong about the timing of his second coming? Why or why not? He is absolutely wrong. He said very, very clearly that people who were listening would not pass before his second coming. And they're all now. Christians, again, will tie themselves into the most exquisite rhetorical knots trying to tell you why this isn't the case. But just go read the words. It is so clear and it's so simple, and it failed. Number 21. What are the key passages in the Bible that show Jesus claimed to be God? I don't have those off the top of my head, so I'm not going to sit here and try to look them up. Number 22. What does the Bible say about the exclusivity of Jesus with regard to salvation? The Bible says that no one comes to the Father but through me. That's truly 101 right there. Number 23. Why did Jesus have to die on the cross for our sins to be forgiven? Couldn't God have just pardoned sins without a gruesome death involved? Yeah, he could have. There is no logical reason why this had to happen. And if you believe that there is a logical reason why this had to happen, that means that your God is not omnipotent. You can't have it both ways. The idea that this had to happen this way, and yet you want to tell me that he's an omnipotent God, they do not mesh. It makes no sense. Number 24. What are the 4 minimal facts of the resurrection that are so strongly attested historically that they are granted by nearly every scholar who studies the subject, even the rather skeptical ones? I don't have them off the top of my head, but they're bullshit. So I'm trying to go through this quickly because I don't want this to be a 3-hour video. So 25. What are the main theories, non-belief? But I will mention, there's just so much about the resurrection that apologists will do a gish gallop on, and they will try to tell you, oh, this is virtually understood by everyone as true, and this is accepted by everyone, and this is accepted by everyone, and they'll just throw this stuff at you with no proof whatsoever. And the fact is, it's not accepted by everyone. I mean, it's accepted by everyone who's an apologist already. It's accepted by everyone who's on their knees on Sunday, begging for forgiveness. But it's not accepted by everyone, or even most people who are looking at it critically. They will throw this crap at you like, no, everyone agrees on this. And they can throw this at you because they know that you won't have the time or the resources to actually look that shit up. 25. What are the main theories non-believers have about the resurrection? For example, unknown tomb, wrong tomb, disciples stole the body, authorities hid the body, etc. I mean, you pretty much hit on it. I mean, regardless of what the theories are, the fact is that you can't prove that he was resurrected. I can't prove that he was not. No one can prove it or disprove it. The sooner you get off of this idea that you have to be able to prove the resurrection, A, you'll be a better Christian. B, you'll understand the true meaning of faith. And C, you'll stop making yourself look like an idiot in front of anyone who actually understands scientific evidence. 26. Why do Christians believe a supernatural or bodily resurrection explains the minimal facts better than all the other theories? Well, they do today because it's been browbeat into them. There were centuries where people like the Gnostics debated this heavily as to whether or not the resurrection was truly bodily. And now they believe it, the Christians believe it, because it's been codified at the Council of Nicaea, because it's been browbeaten into them. They've been told that they're not Christians unless they go along. And guess what? Since all their family and everyone else around them is a Christian, they don't want to be ostracized, so now they tell you that they believe it too. It's that simple. Number 27, why does it matter whether or not Jesus was resurrected and that the resurrection wasn't simply a metaphor? It matters because your faith sucks. Because you feel like you have to prove things in order to somehow make your faith real. When in fact, what should be really important to you is the ideas of this. And whether they happened or not, it shouldn't make a difference in the doctrines of your faith. But for so many Christians, their faith sucks so bad that they have to cling to these ideas of proving the resurrection to try to justify their own mental state. Number 28, who selected what books are in the Bible? That's a long answer. I don't know why they would put this here. I mean, when we talk about the Old Testament, this was curated over many centuries by Hebrews, and there's not like one person who decided what books were in that. In terms of the New Testament, it was infamously misidentified as being codified at the Council of Nicaea, when in fact it was not. the canon was pretty much set. I don't know, it's like 100 years before then even. There were other apocryphal books that people have debated, but like I said, I'd have to do a whole piece on it to actually say, how each one of the books got in. That's a sticky. It's kind of weird that they would throw this in here because pretty hard to talk about succinctly. 29. How were the books of the Bible selected? Same answer as far as who selected them and how were they selected. I think the most important thing to know is that it was not the Council of Nicaea, despite what someone may want to tell you. Number 30, why were some books that we know about today, I like how they put books in quotation marks as though, even if the book is full of complete bullshit, it's still a book, okay? But it says, why were some books we know about today, for example, the Gospel of Thomas, left out of the Bible? Again, this is the Apocrypha. These are other books that were purported to have been part of the canon, and yet they were never truly part of the canon. Usually the ones that were left out, they have origins that are even less certain than the other books of the Bible, especially the New Testament. Of course, some of them have teachings that are considered to be heretical, but more often than not, the ones that aren't in are especially not in because their lineage seems to come from much later. And, they kind of cropped up well after the real canon was kind of codified and understood. And then there's a lot of questions as to where they came from, what the agenda was of the writers, etc. I'm not saying that those other books are less or more true. I mean, to me, I'm an atheist, so none of it matters. But I do know that the idea that there were conspiracies to leave these books out is BS. That's an unnecessarily skeptical view that's not supported in fact. 31. How can we know that the Bible we have today is a reliable record of the original writings? That's a good question. And to be fair, there are a lot of atheists who will lazily tell you that one of the problems with the Bible is that it's like a telephone game. It's like, okay, from the Hebrew it got translated once, and then that translation got retranslated, and that translation got retranslated again, and after you do this 10 times, you end up with a book that has nothing in common with the original book, and that is unfair, and it's ignorant of how biblical scholarship actually works. So when they do a new version of the Bible, I mean, there are some versions that are very bad and poorly done, but for the most part, if someone's doing a real version translation of the Bible and they're doing it in good faith, what they will be doing is taking a look at the latest status of biblical scholarship as it applies today. They will be looking at anything that people have. If they've come up with new original texts, they won't retranslate something that's already been translated 3 times. A good biblical translation will start by going back to the original text again. Now, that doesn't mean that these translations won't change over time because we get new understanding of those original texts. Sometimes we do get new pieces of the original text that are from later, although that's usually like little fragments. It's like no one's coming up with like a brand new version of Exodus that hasn't been seen before. That's 100 years before the old one. I mean, that would be an amazing find, but that really doesn't happen. But the biblical scholars, and I'm not one, but I have tremendous respect for them, they spend a lot of time, and most of them have a lot of integrity in terms of trying to be very careful about what the original texts say and any new understanding that we have about the text, and then any new translations that go forward ideally encompass that knowledge into the new translation. Number 32, what major contradictions exist in the Bible? And again, they put contradictions in quotation marks. Yeah, right. And what are the explanations? I love how it says, and what are the explanations? There are too many. I mean, this would be a 5-hour video for me to sit here and go through all the contradictions. Some of them are major, some of them are minor. Some of them can be reasonably explained away by apologists. A lot of them are only explained away by people who are clearly doing anything that they can to claim that there are no contradictions at all. If you just sit down without your God-splaining glasses on and you read the book, the contradictions will jump out at you. And again, some of those contradictions may have some explanations, but many of them do not. And anyone who tells you otherwise is just working backwards from this sycophantic view of univocality. 33, does the Bible support slavery? Why or why not? And then it says in parentheses, don't laugh at this in the next 2 questions. These come up constantly in discussion with atheists. Of course they do. Because the Bible absolutely supports slavery. It doesn't just chronicle something as having happened. It endorses it. God gives rules for how to treat your slaves, how to buy your slaves, and yes, that includes how to beat your slaves. And never once says this is bad or don't do it or this needs to go away. And yet, biblical or Christian apologists will work so hard to try to tell you that's not the case when the plain text is absolutely against it. Number 34, does the Bible support rape? Why or why not? It doesn't support rape in the idea that, hey, go out and rape people, but it absolutely supports patriarchal domination and a really horrible, crappy treatment of women who have been sexually abused. So while it can't be said to support rape, because to me support rape is like a passage that says, here's how you rape your women or something, which it does for slavery. But to say that it doesn't tacitly have many problematic passages with regard to rape would be to stick your head way up your Christian backside. Number 35, does the Bible support human sacrifice? Why or why not? It absolutely does. Why? Because Yahweh sucks. It does not support this massive implementation of human sacrifice, but there are absolutely cases. So God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son, and no, it doesn't happen. The angel stops it, but that was absolutely commanded by God and stopped at the last second. I'm going to script this name. Jephthah sacrificed his daughter to please God, and God was totally good with it. And that was absolutely supported by God. God specifically calls for the sacrifice of firstborn males in Exodus. Now, to be fair, he does afterwards, shortly afterwards, a few chapters later, say that you can avert this by redeeming them, which is basically paying so that you don't have to kill the child. But if you are reading the verses in Exodus and you don't understand what's going on here as this process of human sacrifice, it's because you don't want to and you're an apologist. I'm not saying there was any evidence that this was a widespread practice amongst ancient Israelites. Number 36, what does the Bible say about homosexuality? This is pretty nuanced, despite what the apologists would like you to believe. But in general, it does speak against homosexuality. Again, I'm not going to get all into the detail here, but there's a lot of nuance to this that Christians don't want to hear about, but it's a simple fact that there's a lot to talk about here, and I'm not going to go into it here. 37, how do Christians determine what parts of the Bible are prescriptive and which are descriptive? Well,
God damn it.
I don't know how Christians determine it, but prescriptive and descriptive are basic terms that you don't need to be a rocket science to understand. When God gives a command to do something, that is prescriptive, or when God does it directly, that is prescriptive. Like when God commits genocide in the flood, that is prescriptive. When he tells the Israelites to commit genocide against the Canaanites, that is prescriptive. In other cases, there are descriptive instances of all sorts of weird stuff happening in the Bible. But this is a common dodge from apologists all the time. They say, oh, that's prescriptive, or excuse me, they will say, oh, that's descriptive, not prescriptive. But even when it's descriptive, and then there is no more explanation and there's no more context from anyone saying, yeah, this happened, but it was pretty bad, or it's pretty gross, or it shouldn't happen again, or you should never do this. This idea that things are purely descriptive and we are to take no moral lessons from it is a disgusting dodge. So even when it is only descriptive, if there is no other context that says this is bad or don't do this, then you have to remember that this is put in the Bible and no one here is saying it's bad, and so many other people are pulling their lessons from the Bible that if you have disgusting practices, even if they are descriptive in nature, and you can't be bothered to put any commentary about how that's bad, that speaks very poorly of your religion and your text. Oh goody. Young Earth creationism. 38. What is young Earth creationism? It is a fairy tale that is supported by no scientific evidence whatsoever. 39. What are the key pieces of scriptural support for the young Earth creation interpretation of creation in 6 24-hour days? It's called Genesis. You have your fairy tale, you have your creation myth, so that is your support for this fairy tale. Number 40, how do young Earth creationists determine that the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old? By adding up the lineages going back from Adam. 41, what areas of science have implications for the age of the Earth? I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. Geology, radiology, but I mean, there's numerous ways that we have now of inferring the age of the Earth. And if I sat here and tried to list the different disciplines that can all bring evidence that speak to the age of the Earth, I would do a sad disservice. 42, what are the major methods scientists use to estimate the age of the Earth? And what is their consensus on the estimate? What was I'd have to look it up. It's several billion years old is the current consensus on the estimate. Again, in terms of the major methods, I know that geology is part of it, radiology, etc. But I mean, there are so many different methods alone that speak to that. 43, what is the relationship between belief in a global flood and the age of the Earth? If you believe that a global flood happened, it means you don't care about science and you've disconnected your brain from reality. So you probably also think that the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old because you don't care about objective truth. 44, what is old Earth creationism? To be honest, I think I used to be more of an old Earth creationist when I still identified as Christian. So obviously the answer, well, I think you guys know, but the answer is essentially people saying that we're not going to stick our head right up our Christian backside. We're going to admit that the Earth is a whole lot older than 10,000 years. And then they try to make sense of how that fits into the Bible, essentially treating Genesis as like allegory. 45, what are the major reasons that old Earth creationists reject the young Earth creation interpretation of creation? Because young Earth creationism is intellectually ignorant and bankrupt. 46, what are the key pieces of scriptural support for the old Earth creationism interpretation? I mean, I think it would be Genesis, but you could draw other inferences, I guess. But the question is, are you going to say, for example, that the 6 days God made the earth and were literal 24-hour periods, or are we speaking more poetically about these phases, these epochs, these eras that happened? Does it have to be a literal translation? That just depends on how you choose to interpret that text. 47, what is intelligent design? It is the ignorant idea that everything had to have some magical sky daddy to make it. 48, why do intelligent design proponents consider a scientific theory and not a religious one? Because they don't understand how science works, and they have no integrity when it comes to actually comparing scientific standards to their own made-up theories. 49, what are the major reasons intelligent design proponents reject evolution as a sufficient explanation for the existence of life? Because intelligent design proponents have no intellectual honesty whatsoever. So once you have disconnected your brain from reality and you are willing to take everything in your magic book, hook, line, and sinker, then you no longer need to worry about things like evolution as a sufficient explanation for the existence of life, because your magic sky daddy told you something else. Number 50, what does it mean that the universe appears to be finely tuned? This is the ignorant idea that because certain variables in the laws of nature wouldn't work if they were off by a billionth, that means that someone must have finely tuned the universe. This is a profound misunderstanding of how natural systems evolve and emerge. Number 51, what is evolution from a purely scientific perspective? It is the natural selection of traits that lead to speciation. 52, what are the key pieces of evidence for evolution? A stunningly massive fossil record that shows multiple incremental steps and shows a clear tree or hierarchy leading from us and all life on Earth back to much simpler life forms. 53, what are the key questions evolution has not answered? I mean, there have to be millions of questions that evolution has not answered, because unlike your bankrupt theories like intelligent design, evolution is proposed and tested by scientists who never claim that they have answered every question by plugging God into the gaps. So the number of questions that are not answered by evolution could fill a library, because scientists, in their honest pursuit of new knowledge, inevitably come up with an endless stream of new questions and new mysteries to be solved. 54. What do people mean when they talk about macroevolution versus microevolution? I'm not sure how some people would use those terms. I know how I would use them, but it's a weird question to say, what do people mean? It's like, which people? So I'm just going to skip that one. 55. Why do evolutionists reject the theory of intelligent design? Because the theory of intelligent design has literally no basis in fact or observable data, and is put together by a series of sycophants and dogmatic idiots who just want to back up their own claims so that they can hold tight to their fantasy of a magic sky daddy. 56. What are the theological implications for an acceptance of evolution? It's not about what are the theological implications? I mean, if your faith didn't suck, they would have no implications. Because the idea that your faith is based on whether or not evolution happened means that your faith sucks ass. I mean, seriously. If your faith is so weak that it can't hold up to scientific exploration, then you have no faith whatsoever. 57. What are the theological implications specifically for Adam and Eve not being literal historical people? Same answer as the last one. 58. Why would Jesus-loving, Bible-believing Christians differ on their view of origins? That's a good question. I mean, ultimately, because despite what Christians want to tell you, the Word of God and the Bible is not clear. And it is full of interpretations, either that the writers brought to it or that you have to bring to it when you read. And on top of that, as if the book itself weren't problematic enough, then of course you have humans trying to add all their different interpretations and politics over the top of it. So that is why they would differ on their view of origins. Number 59, how can Christians believe miracles are possible given what we know about science? For example, the miracle of Jesus' resurrection. Well, you either believe in miracles or you don't. And despite what you may think, since I'm an atheist, I don't have a problem with you believing in miracles. I don't have a problem with you believing in something like the resurrection. That's fine. There are scientists who believe in miracles. But the key is that they don't then go into their scientific colleagues and say, no, this is a real thing and you can't question me on it because, damn it, it's a miracle and I know that it happened. You can be intelligent and intellectually honest with yourself and believe in miracles, but also know that this is an article of faith. And I am being ridiculous if I expect you to accept my claims that cannot be proven and will never be proven. And if you think that your faith depends upon proving these miracles, then your faith sucks. 60. What does it mean biblically to have faith, and how is that different than the popular definition of faith? I don't know what the popular definition of faith would be, however they want to define that. Biblically, to have faith means to believe with no evidence. It means to essentially check your brain at the door. Again, that doesn't, I know it sounds flippant, it doesn't mean you're stupid if you have faith. But it means that with regard to the things that you have faith in, it is an article of faith. You just either have to believe it or you don't. 61. If Christianity is true, why are there so many Christians whose lives look no different than those of non-believers? In parentheses, aren't many Christians hypocrites? Well, yeah, many Christians are hypocrites because they're humans. And I don't care if you think you've been saved or not, that doesn't magically make you a great person. And sometimes people have convinced themselves that they're great people when they're real shitbags. But this idea of Christianity being true or untrue, even that sounds like a silly dichotomy to me.
God damn it.
Even two groups who swear that they are Christians will disagree on some things. So clearly, if we assume that Christianity being true is the entire set of propositions in Christianity being true, then it's almost impossible for anyone, even devout believers, to believe that all of Christianity is true, because they're going to find articles of doctrine and dogma that they disagree on. 62. Why are there so many denominations? And does the fact of many denominations invalidate the truth of Christianity? So, why are there so many denominations? Good question, Johnny. And does the fact of many denominations invalidate the truth of Christianity? No, it does not. But it definitely sullies the idea that the Bible is this univocal, clear direction that is all Christians should need in order to understand their faith. If that were the case, then there would be one or two denominations. And even then, over time, those denominations should come back together again as they get divine inspiration about what the real answers are to their problems. But since they're not getting any real answers, it just splinters endlessly, because there is no central authority coming down and saying, no, this is the way it was supposed to be, or this is what I meant to write in the book and maybe I wasn't clear. No, God has, whether you want to believe it or not, God has essentially gone quiet, assuming you ever believe that God talked to anyone in the first place. Because if God were actively driving things forward, these things would, yes, splinter from time to time, but then they would consolidate again when the word of God became clearer. And we are not getting that, whether you want to believe that God speaks or not. This simply is not happening. 63, is Christianity responsible for millions of deaths throughout history? Why or why not? Yeah, it absolutely is responsible. And what implications does the answer have for the evaluation of Christian truth claims? Well, that's obviously pretty complex. I mean, on one hand, Christianity has been comprised of billions of people throughout time, and any organization that's made of billions of people will at times make horrific decisions, even up to and including those that kill many other people. I'm not saying that as an apologist to make light of anything, and I'm not saying that that excuses anything. I'm just being realistic about it. That being said, the fact that the book itself endorses genocide and many other nasty practices like slavery doesn't help anything at all. So that is a very sticky thing that any parent should have a hard time talking about with their kids. But as to the end of this question where it says, what implications does the answer have for the evaluation of Christian truth claims? I mean, ultimately, that makes no impact whatsoever on, for example, did Christ resurrect? Was he resurrected? I mean, even if Christians have gone out and murdered 1 billion people, and honestly over time maybe they have, but even if that is the case, that would not say anything positive or negative about whether Christ resurrected. Those are two entirely separate questions. 64, what happens to people who have never heard the gospel? They go to hell.
You
Yeah, Johnny, they go to hell. I know Christians don't want to hear that, but if you read it carefully, they go to hell. 65. Why don't miracles happen as frequently today as they did in the Bible? Well, because in the Bible, you had a bunch of old Hebrew men who wanted to write down things that sounded good for their audience and would proselytize for this idea of their God. But there was not, at any time in Hebrew/Israelite history, a time when they were walking around and miracles were just happening all around them. It's like, oh, what do you know? Another miracle happened today. No, despite what you might read in the books, because guess what? Old men wrote that to promote their religion. So there we have it. That's 65 questions. Whew. We got through a lot of them, didn't we? I tried to go as fast as possible. Obviously, I was very high level on these because some of these could be entire videos, and this video could have been a 5-hour video, which I don't want to make and you guys don't want to watch. But I thought it'd be fun to go through these in rapid style and hear the questions that apologists are saying they should talk to their kids about. And I don't disagree. A lot of these you should talk to your kids about. A lot of these maybe you should think about deeply yourself, because some of them don't speak so well to what it is that you're worshiping. Thank you for joining me here on another episode of Cynical Sermons. I am your boy, Adam Anola. If I've given any answers today, even one answer that is in any way incorrect or against Christian doctrine or theology in any way, Yahweh or Jesus or the Holy Spirit, does anyone want to correct me on any of this? Anything? There you go. I guess I nailed it. So like, subscribe, do all the things. I hope to see you on future videos. I appreciate you being here with me. This has been helpful for me. I hope it's helpful for you. And until I see you again,
I'm getting in your business. I'm getting in your business, you slut. Man, she's got some red spit arms. With pit and red spit.
I found 3 cases exposing corruption in the force, featuring 6 so-called officers who lived to regret it. Starting with Courtney Brown, Christy Wilson, and Jacob Hummerich House. In April 2018, Officer Brown was driving eastbound on Crossville near Crabapple Road when she witnessed this car fly right past her at a proclaimed 80 miles per hour. Brown flipped on her lights and promptly pulled over the suspect. Brown steps out to confront the suspect.
Stay in the car.
Sorry, my window doesn't hold.
Officer Brown, Roswell Police Department. You know how fast you were just going, ma'am?
I'm so sorry, I'm late for work.
So you could go over 80 miles per hour on 92? No, ma'am. You have your driver's license and your insurance card?
No.
Turn off the car and pass me the keys, please.
She got syrup.
The ground's wet, it's been raining, you're going over 80 miles an hour on this type of a road. That's reckless driving, ma'am.
After berating the driver, she's revealed to be 24-year-old Sarah Webb, a local hairstylist who's late for work.
Where do you work at?
I work in Duluth at Jody Parker Studio.
Okay.
I'm a hairstylist.
Okay. So you think driving that fast on a wet road is a smart idea just because you're late for work? Instead of calling and say you're running late for work, you would rather risk people's lives.
I'm sorry. This is LexisNexis. I'm trying to look it up. I don't have it printed off.
Give me 1 second, I'll be right with you.
Sarah's already bad day just got 1,000 times worse. She's now at risk of being charged with reckless driving, a misdemeanor that can land a driver behind bars for up to 1 year and incur a fine of up to $1,000. Brown's frustration is becoming more noticeable. Unable to operate her CAD, she radios out for backup.
I'm having issues with my CAD. Please do an 8 and 10 check on the Georgia tag.
2 officers respond. Jacob Hummerich House is first to arrive on scene.
Like almost 90 down 92. She flew past me. I had to get up to 90 to catch her.
Wow.
My CAD's not working. Is yours?
Alright.
Can you see if
As Hummerich House goes to check the validity of Webb's credentials, the second responding officer arrives on scene. One Christy Wilson.
Hey, I'm gonna take her probably for reckless. She flew past me going probably 80, 85 on 92 in the wet road. She said she's running late for work. I had to get up to 90 to catch her. What do you think? I mean, I don't have any speed detection at the same time, but...
No, but you can use the fact that you were going whatever speed and she went past you.
Mm-hmm.
It's on camera, so you're going to have a back speed. You're going to have the fact that you went 90 to catch up to her.
Officer Brown's lack of confidence is becoming more apparent. She's unaware of how to fill out a basic citation, particularly because she lacks a working speed detection device. However, Officer Wilson correctly tells Brown that her best guess based on her own speed and backed by dashcam footage would be sufficient evidence. In Georgia, an officer's opinion on someone's speed based solely on their observation is enough to prove a speeding offense. A jury then decides if they believe the officer's estimation. So basically, Sarah Webb's fate rests entirely in the hands of an officer who needs backup just to be told how to fill out paperwork. Not a great situation to be in, and it only gets worse from here.
We're going to have 2 faster conditions, and...
Yeah, I mean, that's unacceptable. I told her, I said, you know the roads are wet, correct? You're running late for work and you're going above 80 to get to work. I said, call. So do not do that and put people's lives in jeopardy. So, my CAD just froze on me, so I'm restarting it right now. What do you think?
After deliberating on whether or not to arrest Webb for reckless driving, neither officer makes a definitive decision. This is when Officer Brown made the choice that'd end her entire career.
tickets.
Atlanta answer or Rockville answer?
Hold on. Are you? Okay.
Officer Brown pulls out her cell phone and hands it to Officer Wilson with a coin flipping app open, tentatively checking if she'd be okay with doing something so cruel as deciding whether or not to arrest a citizen based on the flip of a coin.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, she did it. Unavailable. My tab's not working. Who's that?
A head, R tail.
Okay.
Officer Wilson suggests heads for arrest and tails for release.
This is tail, right?
Yeah, so really.
23.
Michael Jordan? Hi. So I got too fast for. Let me write this down.
Too fast for conditions.
Despite the coin landing on tails, the officers laugh and decide to arrest her anyway. In spite of playing with someone's life, they think it's an appropriate time to crack a joke, saying Michael Jordan as he wore the number 23, the same as the code for arrest.
Is it reckless?
Yeah, you can do reckless. And then speeding. And you're just gonna have to mark the pace one instead of the.
I mean, either way, the speed limit here is what, 45?
Superseded.
The officers are clueless on what they can really arrest her for, so Humrick House mentions the term super speeder as a desperate attempt to justify the arrest to himself.
So I haven't done one like speeding like that, so that's why I'm a little bit unsure.
Patrol vehicle spot, and then it's gonna ask you for moving or not moving into.
Can you help me do these dang tickets? My dad won't even log me in.
Brown's incompetence shows itself once again as she pawns off the paperwork to Wilson, seemingly eager to arrest Ms. Webb.
Sorry. Alright, I'm gonna go. Yeah, that's not okay. Yeah. Alright, man. Do me a favor and step out of the vehicle for me. Shut the phone out. Why would you find out? Step out of the vehicle. Turn off your hands on your breath. Because, ma'am, you're driving entirely too fast for conditions. You put a lot of people's lives in jeopardy, okay? Double locking these so that they don't tighten on you. Do me a favor and step in front of my vehicle, ma'am. Step in front of my patrol vehicle. Do you have anything in your pockets up? Do you have anything on you that could sticker stab me? Any drug paraphernalia, anything like that? Okay. You have them on. Can you turn to the side for me? Here, do a hunger test. I'm just gonna take this out, okay? Alright. Can you make sure I step over here? It's my patrol vehicle. Have a seat for me. We're gonna buckle you in, okay?
Even in the face of Sarah Webb weeping, Officer Brown coldly arrests her and places her in the back of her patrol vehicle, citing her with reckless driving.
Thank you. Who is it weird that?
Nope. I am. Without a stamp or.
Oh. I don't know why they're plugging me.
He's on number 4.
No one's an owner that's here? All of you.
Got 5 people. I said I am. I just don't have my stamp yet.
Come on, keep me so notary.
Good?
Yeah.
But this is the last time these two officers would be smiling and joking around, unaware the case would be flipped around entirely. You see, once news of this incident became public, the backlash was enormous.
Former officers Courtney Brown and Christy Wilson.
Officers Courtney Brown and Christy Wilson.
All the charges against Webb were dropped.
The flip of a coin. They flipped a coin.
Flipping a coin.
Used a coin toss app.
Exactly. I couldn't believe what I was saying, to be honest.
The city administrator, Gary Palmer, led an investigation promotion into the Roswell Police Department. Courtney Brown and Christy Wilson were terminated as a result. The charges on Ms. Webb were dropped, and although Jacob Humrickhouse witnessed the event and said nothing, he was not reprimanded for his actions. But if you think these officers abusing women who speed is as bad as it gets, just wait till you see how terribly these two officers treated a completely innocent blind veteran. On October 31, 2022, Deputy Jamie Godey of the Columbia County Sheriff's Office stopped 61-year-old legally blind veteran Jim Hodges as he was walking home from jury duty at the intersection of Duval Street and Marion Avenue in Lake City, Florida.
Hi there! What's this in your back pocket? I just want you walking it.
Navigational link. What's the problem? You're a tyrant?
Yeah, I am actually. What's your name and date of birth?
I don't have to. What's the problem? You're a tyrant?
Yeah, I am actually. What's your name and date of birth?
I don't have to give that.
Yes, sir. I was investigating.
You have reasonable.
Do you want me to touch your cups right now? Yes, sir, I do.
What is your suspicion?
It looks like you're carrying a gun in your back pocket. I'm stopping to make sure you're carrying it properly. You don't
Have
have
you
to.
ensured that it's not a firearm?
No, you keep turning so I can't see it. You don't have to be a dick to me.
Well, you're being one to me.
Mr. Hodges was simply carrying his visual assistance cane in his back pocket, and while Officer Godey initially mistook it for a weapon, as soon as he pulled it out to prove that it wasn't, that should have ended the interaction with him free to go. But the tyrant that she admits to being, Officer Godey doesn't want to follow the law she's sworn to uphold.
No, sir, I'm doing my job.
Am I detained?
Yeah, you are. What's your name and date of birth?
It does not matter.
Yes, sir, it does.
Do you have a crime?
What, do you like me?
Call your supervisor.
He's right here.
Sergeant Randy Harrison arrives on scene.
Alright.
Don't you?
What's the stock for? For a walking stick.
So,
It could look like a weapon. She asked you to really said it, okay? Now she's asking me for ID. Okay? I don't need the ID unless there's a reasonable, articulated suspicion. And I have committed a crime and committed a crime to do a crime. Sir, and her suspicion was that you were armed, okay? She's asking me for your ID. Well, now you verified that I am not armed, okay? So there is. Do you have your ID or not? I do have my ID, okay? You don't need it, okay? Either your ID or you don't get it changed.
Mr. Hodges is rightfully speechless as Sergeant Randy Harrison doubles down on his subordinate's illegal actions. He clearly understands his constitutional rights, knows they're being infringed upon, and is making the wise decision to stay silent to keep from giving these officers any justification for their unlawful behavior.
Where do you want that, sir? I don't need any law on me.
okay, where's your ID?
You're in the pocket. You're talking. You are not allowed to search you.
Here, Mr. Hodges is reiterating that he does not consent to being searched. The Fourth Amendment protects against any unreasonable searches and seizures. Based on the Florida Stop and Frisk Law, an officer may temporarily detain any person reasonably found to have committed, or be committing, or be about to commit a crime for the purpose of ascertaining their identity or the circumstances of the suspected crime. However, in the case of Florida versus Royer, it was clarified that detentions can only be justified up to the point of proving or disproving the crime. Since Mr. Hodges already proved he wasn't carrying a weapon, this detention is absolutely illegal. It seemed like after running his ID that the officers would let Mr. Hodges go, but listen closely to what Sergeant Harrison says as soon as Hodges implies he'll be filing a complaint.
It's gonna be. I want your name and your badge number. I'm not putting you in jail for resisting.
Sergeant Harrison instantly demanded to take Mr. Hodges to jail for resisting arrest, despite him being compliant throughout the illegal detainment.
Alright, let's go.
I want your name and badge number too, sir.
Have a seat.
You wanna pick my property up, please?
I sure will. Happy to have a seat.
You wanna pull this out of my back pocket?
Sure. Here, I'll grab your jacket for you too.
Mr. Hodges was officially charged with resisting arrest without violence, a misdemeanor that can carry up to 6 months in jail, winding up illegally jailed for 24 hours. In spite of the body cam footage clearly showing Mr. Hodges' dignified behavior throughout, the arresting officer lied on the official arrest report, claiming he repeatedly refused to allow identification of the object in his pocket. Thankfully, after reviewing the evidence, or lack thereof, the district attorney dropped the charges just 7 days later. Mr. Hodges then pursued legal action against the sheriff's office as a media frenzy erupted.
Visually impaired man.
A legally blind man.
You just saw he's legally blind, and
this is an aid to a man who's legally blind.
Well, I've always been the kind of person that don't really take things lying down. But I made up my mind to properly, and it is the law in Florida, that you are supposed to resist unlawful orders. So I made up my mind to properly, legally, and as maturely as possible, given the circumstances, to fight back.
The case is ongoing at the time of this video, with updates regularly posted to Mr. Hodges' personal YouTube channel. As for the officers involved, an internal investigation found they violated Mr. Hodges' constitutional rights, but they received relatively light consequences. Sergeant Harrison was demoted and suspended without pay for 7 days, as well as losing the possibility of any raises or promotions for 2 years, while Deputy Godey only received a 2-day unpaid suspension. Thankfully, some police departments actually take giving preferential treatment to law-breaking officers very seriously, as Tampa City Police Chief Mary O'Connor found out on the night of November 12, 2022. Pinellas County, Florida Sheriff's Deputy Larry Jacoby pulled over an unregistered golf as Tampa City Police Chief Mary O'Connor found out on the night of November 12, 2022. Pinellas County, Florida Sheriff's Deputy Larry Jacoby pulled over an unregistered golf cart heading southbound on East Lake Road and Woodlands Parkway.
Service yard, Woodlands Park West, and golf cart. Okay. Good evening.
Hey, Tom.
Deputy Sheriff's Office stopped you because you driving tag or unregistered vehicle with no tag on it on the roadway.
In the state of Florida, golf carts do not need to be registered and thus don't require tags. The only requirement to drive one on a public roadway is being above the age of 14, which these two clearly are. However, Pinellas County traffic laws state that golf carts can only be operated inside designated golf cart zones and must be registered and insured, which supersedes the state law, making this a completely routine stop.
Yeah, we went to the club. It was closed, so we went over and picked up some.
Is your camera on?
Yes.
I'm the police chief in Tampa.
Oh, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
I'm hoping that you'll just let us go today.
Okay, yeah, I'll say, not to say you look familiar, so.
Yeah, I'm sure I do.
Okay, so. Alright, folks.
The woman in the cart reveals herself to be recently appointed Tampa City Police Chief Mary O'Connor. Despite this being a minor infraction that would likely end in a warning no matter what, O'Connor was smirking throughout the entire encounter before thinking this inconsequential situation was the right time to throw her weight around. She even asked if Jacoby's camera was recording, as someone in her position should know asking for special treatment like this is completely unethical.
Well, have a good night. Staying over here in East Lake Woodlands?
Yeah, we live in East Lake Woodlands.
Okay. Alright. Well, it's nice to meet you.
So, I'm Deputy Trophy.
Okay. Same here, my friend.
Alright.
Take care of yourself.
Take care. Alright, no worries. Like I say, we had a lot of problem with the golf carting around here. You know, everybody
we don't normally come out.
We never come out.
So we go up to the drink place to get some food.
Gotcha, okay. Alright. Alright then, we'll take care. And it was nice meeting you.
Alright.
Oh, alright.
You ever need anything, call me.
Okay.
Serious.
Alright. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for yours. Take care.
Little did Mary O'Connor know that wink and handshake interaction would lead to her total downfall.
Joining us tonight, first appearance 6 o'clock, Tampa's top cop is out. Just 10 months after getting picked for the job, Mayor Jane Castor today asked for and received Police Chief Mary O'Connor's resignation.
I'm hoping that you before the skull tonight.
Then I provide those second chances. You can never know what decisions individuals are going to make down the road, and clearly she made a very poor decision.
Click on the video on screen and watch as I delve further into the corruption.
In mathematics, we sometimes run into situations that seem absurd, like trying to raise -1 to the power of pi. And we sort of think to ourselves, how in the world can we make any kind of sense out of that? Well, very often it's the case that if we're willing to move into the realm of complex numbers, imaginary numbers, that things become more clear. And that's going to be the case with what we're going to talk about in this video, which is trying to figure out what -1 to the power of pi actually is. Now, we're going to begin by looking at this function. F of x equals -1 to the power of x. That's an innocent enough looking function. The formula doesn't seem to be too complicated. But actually, this is quite a difficult function to try to understand in any kind of deep way. And if you don't believe me, try to graph the function. And good luck trying to graph it. Now, of course, there aren't any issues if we just plug in a whole number, integer for x. So if we plug in an even number for x, we get 1 as an output. If we plug in an odd number, we get -1. But notice what happens when we plug in 1/2. Well, f of 1/2 is -1 to the 1/2 power, which is the same thing as the square root of -1, which is I. So notice already we have an imaginary number here when we let x be 1/2. Now, what is f of pi? That's ultimately what we're trying to find. We have -1 to the pi power. Now, this one is particularly challenging because not only do we have the negative base here, but we have an irrational exponent. So pi is an irrational number, meaning that it cannot be written as a ratio of integers. Now, an irrational exponent in and of itself is not too hard to deal with. So, for example, if we have 5 to the power of pi, what does 5 to the power of pi mean? Well, 5 to the power of pi, what we do is we take the decimal expansion of pi, so 3.141592 and so on, and we raise 5 to these farther and farther out decimals of pi. So 5 to the 3, 5 to the 3.1, 5 to the 3.14, and so on, and we continue that on. Now, 5 cubed is pretty simple. That's just 125. What does 5 to the 3.1 mean? Well, 3.1 is really 31 over 10. So this just means the 10th root of 5 raised to the 31st power. Then we get this decimal for it. And then 5 to the 3.14, that means 5 to the 314 over 100. So we take the 100th root of 5, raise it to the 314th power, and we get this decimal. And we continue on in this fashion. These numbers, these outputs, the decimals are going to get closer and closer to a certain number, 156.9925 and so on. And this is what we call 5 to the pi. That's really how we define 5 to the pi, is the limit of this sequence. Now, why doesn't this same process work for -1 to the pi? Well, if we try the same thing for -1 to the pi, first of all, we can begin with -1 cubed, and that's no problem, that's just -1. But what about -1 to the 3.1 power? Well, 3.1 again is 31 over 10. So this is the same thing as the 10th root of -1 raised to the 31st power. Well, the fact that we're taking an even root of a negative number means that we're going to have to use imaginary numbers. But as soon as we're using imaginary numbers, something kind of strange happens. If you take the 10th root of a number, you're going to get 10 different answers. So -1 has 10 different 10th roots. And then we take each of those 10th roots and raise them to the 31st power. We would get 10 possible answers here. And it would get even worse if we did -1 to the 3.14, because we'd have the 100th root of -1 raised to the 314th power, but there are 100 different 100th roots of negative 1. So defining negative 1 to the pi in the same way is going to run into all kinds of problems. So how do we define negative 1 to the pi? Well, we're going to write negative 1 to the pi as e to the natural log of negative 1 to the pi. Now here, natural log is really the complex natural log function. It's usually written as just log. But the complex logarithm is really just the inverse of the complex exponential function. And you can do many of the same things, has many of the same properties that the ordinary natural log function has. So for example, we can bring this pi up front. So we can rewrite this as e to the pi times natural log of negative 1. Now, you might think, well, we're stuck at this point because you can't take a logarithm of a negative number, right? We all know that. In fact, probably our high school teacher told us you can't take a logarithm of a negative number. Well, your high school teacher was wrong. Sort of wrong, anyway. You can't take a logarithm of a negative number if you're only willing to stay within the real number.